Hello and welcome to Sylvan Miss Designs. Tonight I am working with a 10 by 8 canvas. This has been pre-sprayed with just a clear varnish, a really light mist, and just 2 tiny coats of it. Tonight I'm going to be using my Happy Dotting Company tools. The only other tool that I'll be using is going to be my nail art tool. I'm going to be utilizing the 0.5 end per the usual for swooshes, and there will be a lot of them in this particular piece. There will be 4 main colors that I'll be using. That's going to be the magenta, gentle heather, timeless gray, and just a standard white. I've already laid out my grid. This is actually done with a white charcoal pencil, a ruler, and compass. All right, let's get into it. So my first dot is going to be the 14. As you can see here, I have a very small circle to start with. If you're a beginner and you have a little bit of trouble getting that first dot absolutely center, what you can do is on your compass, mark out one of the smallest circles that you can make. Again, mine for this particular one was just a 1. And again, that fits perfectly for my 14. Okay, so I will have this lined up beautifully. I'm going to make sure to load that up very well. My first row of dots is going to be a 2, and I'm going to go into the gray. I'm going to do a series of micro dots in the white around this. I'm going to go up to a 4. All right, now I'm moving up to a 3. Following these grid lines, I'm going to use a 5, and we're going to start a series of walk dots. I'm going to start the top dot for my walk with the number 2, and then the actual walked portion I'm going to go down to a 1.5. Remember, as you go through these, to keep your tool nice and clean so that your dot sizes are all going to be relatively equal. So same as I've done here, for the next row, I'm just going to go up a size to a 3, and then the walks are a 2.5. Looking at this pattern now, I'm going to come back in with a few more micro dots with a 1 in between these magenta ones. Now I'm going to be adding a 4 along the top of these. Now for our first set of swooshes, I'm going to bring these into the middle here. I'm going to start out with a 2.5. I'm picking up my nail art tool now, and the swooshes that I'm going to be doing are very small and thin rather than the big bulky kind of tear-shaped dots. So for these, I kind of want to gauge where the middle of these two comes in, and then I'm going to place a dot right up here. Okay, let me get that double dotted here. Make sure I have a lot of paint. I'm going to take the nail art tool and I'm going to drag it from the top of this dot all the way through the dot and all the way down as far as I can get it. Now for me, all I'm going to do otherwise is just kind of bring these corners down a little bit, and that's it. It's going to be nice and thin. Drop down from a 2.5 to a 2. We're going to do the exact same thing, but now the head of the new dot is going to fall just under the head of the current one. So it's going to be here in what would be this kind of crook. Otherwise, it's going to be the same, except I'm going to follow it just a little bit inward. And it's going to be a touch shorter. And I'll get one of these dots on either side of the original. The only real difference you're going to see here is instead of me going directly through the center of the dot and down, because I am trying to go to this central point, I am taking the paint from the outermost edge and bringing it down towards the point, and then just filling in this gap by pulling the center down. Come back in with a 1 and do some dots here additionally on this side, just to add a little bit more of an accent. All right, now we're at a really fun part. So if you're wanting to practice swooshes, here's my suggestion. If you're following along, in this space here, I am going to be doing a row of random swooshes as a border. Now, I've done these ones ahead of time. I've added these swooshes in. Theoretically, if you're going to be doing this, you could start with the row that I am doing, just this practice, and then come back in and add these, like I did originally. When I first laid out this design, I added these in afterwards. Okay, but like I said, let's get to the fun part. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be starting out with a 6. And I'm going to progressively be going down a half a step. All I'm going to be doing is filling in this particular section with, like I said, random swooshes. And then I'll follow that up with some dots. Now, these are strictly going to be walked dots. For the most part, I really won't have any room to do any single dots, but as I go through here, I'll make some mention, and so you'll understand what I mean when I say this. The largest dot, again, that I'm going to start with for my swooshes is going to be a 6, and primarily for the dots and the walks that are going to go in between them, I'm going to start those probably with nothing more than like a 1.5. The only rule that I'm going to be following here is that I do want to make a few swooshes, and I'll start out by showing you exactly what I mean. So I'm going to start out by randomly putting one, say, here. As you can see, the top of the dot is right along this guideline of mine. Okay, and so what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to take and bring the paint here, and I am going to drag it across and around this line. Now my swooshes again are not going to have any set plans, they're going to be random, but this is my only rule set. Okay, I'm going to be doing stuff like this so that there is a defined edge all the way around. Okay, that includes both this top edge and this bottom one here, because I do want this to be a ring, and I do want it to be very defined. So let's get started. Let's have a little fun here. Just so I kind of have room, I'm going to start by doing 3 of each sized kind of dot, and I'm sort of going to space them out a little bit. Okay, so now I've got 3 of those. I'm going to drop down a half a size, and I'm going to go into the next color. And then I'll do the same. Now you can make these really short, really long, curved, literally whatever you want to do. Makes absolutely no difference. I will say though that these bigger ones are much easier to use as kind of the main borders. One thing you may notice as I'm going through here is I am also trying to spread it out so that you're not going to run into, like I'm here back in the magenta, I don't want another magenta too close to the existing one. So I do try to kind of spread that out a bit. Now that was a size 4. Now I'm ready to add in a few of the walked dots that I talked about. Now that I have still a little bit of room left over and I'm starting to get into the smaller ones, I'll show you what I mean as far as these walked are concerned. Just from trial and error, I have found that the walked dots in this particular section blended in too far when I used the magenta because I'm using kind of a small walked dot. So for these ones, I'm going to skip over the magenta and I'm going to use the other 3 colors. So what I'll do is, for example here, I'm going to use this 1.5 really loaded up, and I'm going to start a series of walked dots right here at the top of this swoosh. and I'm just going to follow it around. I might do that same thing here. Maybe I'll flip it upside down and do the start at the bottom here. Now you don't have to stick to a 1.5, and you can do them in any size you want to. But 1.5 and 1 seem to work pretty well for this. The 1.5 I'm going to start with, and then as I start to close this in, I'll go down to maybe even a 1 or a 0.5 for this. So now let's get back into some swooshes, and I'm going to drop into the 3-5, and we were here in the magenta, so I'm going to pick back up with the heather, and let's just start finding some empty spaces. Just further going down into a 3. As you can see, it gets a little interesting to fill some of the spaces, and really fun to do some of these others, because I do still want to make sure that I've kind of got this border laid out. Just get kind of creative. There's no rules, and you can't really screw this up. Okay, down to a 2-5. Now I think it's time. I'm going to go into the 0.5, and I'm going to see about getting in some more dots here. Okay, let's go to a 2. Back here. And it is, of course, getting hard to find room to fit these in now, but that's good. I'm going to stay with the 1.5. This will probably be the smallest one that I'll use for that. I'm not going to get very great swooshes out of anything in a 1 or a 0.5, at least not for what I want. I think I'm done with that. Now I just need, like I said, to find any of these extra little spots. Let me go into a 1 here, and I'm just going to fill these in. The only dots that I'm filling in as a remainder here are sections that are not going to be big enough to hold anything else, but I definitely need to do something with to make sure that this row or ribbon or whatever you want to call it has these really defined edges. And I'm just flipping through the colors. Okay, I think that's done. All right. So now hopefully you can see what I meant when I started. There is a very distinct border now. You can clearly see all of the edges, but I didn't have to use just a straight row of dots to get the desired effect. All right, now personally here, I'm going to be taking a bit of a break, and I might pick this project up again likely tomorrow or within the next day or two. I like to only spend about an hour on a project, let everything dry, get a fresh new set of paint, whatever. But I will be right back, and we will get the next section of this finished when I'm back. Hey, hello, and welcome back. Okay, so this is my second day working on the project. For you, again, it would have just been a quick flash of a moment, but I'm ready to pick this up again. Now, as you might notice here, I did draw a couple of additional lines on my outside. That's going to help facilitate what I want to do with the tips. And again, these are just 1 centimeter apart. So let's continue on here. I'm going to do some series of walked dots, but I want to give a little bit of room on the outside of this ring here. So I'm going to start with a 3 and do a landing dot. Now, my main dot, I want that one to be white. So what I think I'm going to do is let's go into the gray. And let's do the landing dot in gray. Now I'm going to go up to my 5 and do my main middle dot for my walks. Now we're going to start with the walk dots. And again, we're going to go with a 2.0 and a 1.5 walk. Follow that exact same pattern again. I'm going to go up 1 step to a 3, and the walk is going to be a 2.5. Now the next step is going to go up to a 4. And I've said it before, especially with these ones, but again, anytime that I personally get over a 3 in a dot size and I'm going to be doing walked dots, then I'm going to be using more than 1 tool or potentially even 2. So I'm going to start out with my top dot as the 4. Then I'm going to go down 2 dots and do those 2 dots in a 3.5. Then after I've done those 2 dots, the remainder then would be with the 3. So I am going to be using 2 separate tools with 3 different sizes. these did not quite go down as far as I wanted to, so I picked up the 2 to do just one additional dot right down here at the bottom, just to close that in a little more than what it was. So for this next one, I'm only going to be doing dots on one side, and I'm not going to go up actually a full point to a 5, but rather a 4.5. And as I go down, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the gray underneath it, and I'm just going to go down half a size to a 4, and I'm going to do 2 dots, and then half a size and 2 dots, and so on until I get to the end. Okay, now I am ready to do some more swooshes. Grabbing my tool again here, and I'm going to go up to a 5. Now, these extra lines here that I've drawn is where I'm going to be using these. So what I'm going to do, instead of laying a dot directly on the top of this one, I have this guideline and another one here marked. And what I'm going to do is I'm purposely going to leave a little bit of space right in between this dot here and the next one. So I'm going to put the 5 at the top of this join so that there's a little bit of space. Now I do want to load this up. All right, so I got that nice and loaded. Now let's switch over to the tip. And what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to bring this as a swoosh down along this side. So what I want to do first is I kind of want to angle this just a little. Let's go down to about there if I can reach it. So about the 3rd dot. Okay. This, I'm just going to come down here. And then if I can, the end is, if you can see here, is going to curl just slightly into that little nook. And again, there's that tiny itty bitty space still left there. All right, we're going to work on the next one. So essentially I'm taking it, instead of working from the top straight down, I'm kind of doing the diagonal. So I'm holding it here, sort of where that line intersects. Okay, I'm going to pull down and continue pulling until we reach that 3rd one. Okay, and then we'll kind of curl it. And then I'm shaping my dot here. For the next swoosh, I'm going to do more or less the same thing, and I'm going to drop down to a 4. So obviously a lot of what we're doing is going to be just in these either half or 1 point increments. Now for this one, I'm going to go not immediately underneath this one, so it's kind of in the crook between number 1 and 2, but more that it's lined up almost with number 2. get a nice heavy dot. And then we're going to extend this down. Let's see how far we can get this one. And this one, just going to go right up along the curve of the first one and on down. All right, so I can get it there. And so that's where I want to aim for the next one as well. So right at the 5th dot there. Same thing, we're going to drop into a 3 now, and we are in the gray. I'm going to kind of follow that same pattern here. This one was on the 2nd dot, this one will be about on the 3rd, so they're not quite as tightly laid underneath the head of the previous dot. They're just slightly more spaced out. And then this one, we should be able to get at least under here. Let's see. This last one, which is a 2, I am double dipping on it as well, but I'm needing to get this line all the way around and touching the bottom here. And just because it is such a small tool size, even after double dipping, I'm still not quite getting enough paint to get it all the way to the end in some cases. So when that happens, I actually just dip my tool into the paint and then drag it down. Okay, now I'm going to go into a 1.5, and instead of doing another swoosh here, I'm actually going to do a set of dots. I'm going to really load this up. And then the last thing I'm doing on these ones is I'm going to grab a 1 and just do another set of dots right here in the crook. Right, now I'm going to take a 5, 5, and we're just going to place a dot in between each of these. That I'm placing on top here is just a 1. And I'm going to take a 5, and this outer ring, what we're going to do is I'm going to place another dot just in this outer ring, one step over from this one. So it should end up give or take about there. are going to take a 1.5 and I'm going to go into the pink. And what I'm going to do is right along this outside line, right next to this dot, I'm going to do a series of walks. Okay, so it's been another few days and the full painting has completely dried, and it's now time that I get a couple of dots and little accents added. For these, I'm actually going to use the Epidemic champagne gold, and then I might also throw in a couple dots of this berry, which almost matches. It's really, really pretty. Now, because I'm not going to use a whole lot, I'm actually just going to use this right out of the lid. So I've got that shaken up real well, and then I'm just going to dip right in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is these here, I'm going to accent with the gold because these two colors just bounce right off each other and make such a beautiful contrast. Okay, so this is just a 1.5. I'm going to stay with this 1.5, and there's two other places that I want this to go. The first is I'm going to take and right in the crook here, I'm going to leave a little dot on each of these. And again, same with the 1.5. I'm actually going to go down the other side of the walked dots here. Let me find a nice comfortable place for my hand so I can do this one. And again, right in the crook of these dots. Okay, now that that's done, let's see if I can pick up few in here. I think those are all the small. Oh, there's one more here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is actually go into the 4. Okay. I'm going to get these largest ones here. Then I'm going to take the 3 and I'm going to accent the tips here. And that'll be all the accents I'll do for the gold, I do believe. Now, let me do the same here. Now this berry, like I said, it's almost the same color as the magenta that I was using, but it does have that beautiful sparkle. So it will give a nice little shimmer to some of this. I think I'll stay in the 3, and then let me put an accent on these ones here. Switch. I'm going to go down just slightly to the 2.5, and then the last piece is I'm going to do an accent here on these gray. Now that I look at this, I feel like I also want to add a little bit of gold here to these tips. I'm just going to go into a 2 and go through and do those as well. I think we're completely done. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this piece. It has been really, really fun. We have lots and lots of swooshes, and I hope if you followed along, you've got plenty of practice under your belt now. All right, again, thank you so much for watching. I certainly do appreciate it. If you've made it this far, make sure that you take a moment to stop, subscribe, and give a like. Take care and have a fantastic afternoon.